Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm pretty excited this week because I have a guest, which I don't always do, but really, really enjoy it when I do. And this guest in particular is a really good friend of mine who we met through business stuff. And in the last 2 years, has it been 2 years? Wow. Yeah, fun fact about us, we've never met each other in person. But we met each other through the interwebs, through a business adventure, whatever we want to call it. I'm not going to name names on what that is, just in case. But we met through one of these business things and became friends and stayed in touch and have been. Well, Jessica in particular is who my guest is. She has been monumental in my development and my growth and my business operations and cheering me on. And when I felt like I wanted to jump off the edge of a cliff, she's like, "No, don't do that. Not today. Not
Wow.
today. We don't need to do that today." So she has been hugely helpful in everything personal development and business operations and working through everything that we tend to work through when we're entrepreneurs. So her name is Jessica Graham, and she is a personal narrative coach, which I'm not going to butcher to tell you what that is. I'm going to let her do it. And we're just going to talk all things honoring ourselves today, as usual, and get Jessica's take on what that looked like in her life, what that means to her, because she has some really cool experiences in life where she really had to dig deep and make a change in her life and honor herself so that she could become who she came here to be and really develop into what she is today. So, and who she is today, not what she is today, who she is today. So, everybody welcome Jessica. And Jessica, I'll punt it over to you to do a more proper introduction of yourself.
Thank you. Well, I'm just so excited and honored to be here, really. And I can't believe that it's been 2 years since we met. That's so wild. You kind of made it sound like we might have met in an MLM, so I'm going to assure everyone we did not. And it wasn't cult related at all. So, just a caveat.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. Good,
You're
good
so welcome.
clarity. Good clarity.
But
Cool.
yeah, so I mean, I guess a little bit about what I do. So I help women navigate struggle and I help them rewrite their transformative moments to really get like that empowering ending. I find that a lot of us, including myself, kind of carry these stories around with us that are just keeping us stuck in these old loops and old patterns. And when you can go back and kind of rewrite what is there and flip the script on it, because we can't go back and like change what's happened, but we can change our perspective on what's happened. So I help people do that. And as you know, I do that through my method called Beyond the Story and in my signature program called Rewritten. So we use a lot of the reflective journaling and community for support in that whole process. So that's what I do.
Love it. And I would like to hear, just so other folks know as well. I know a decent amount about your background, but I'd love to hear, where you grew up, where you're living now, and, the quick 30,000-foot view of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I lived
AKA,
there. What?
AKA.
Albuquerque,
Yep.
or as the locals call it, Burque. Um, yeah, so I was born there and I lived there until I moved overseas. Basically, I moved a little bit to Colorado and Texas, but it barely counts. And when I left to move overseas and I was working as an international school teacher. So I started in the Middle East, went around Asia, met my now husband, and am living in Liechtenstein because that's where he lives. So that's how I ended up here. And I've been living abroad since 2011. So that's like the moving story and kind of a little bit of like the international school background story of a decade. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and what made you, if you don't mind sharing, what was it that mobilized you to work outside the country? Because that's just a big deal, you know, I mean, there's some people who don't even move outside their states or their towns, let alone their countries. So, what was it that motivated you to pick up and leave? Because I know part of it too, there's probably a chapter even before that, right? Because you moved out of Albuquerque and you moved from there and you did some things before you moved outside the country. So, a little bit of background I think there would be cool to hear about.
Yeah, I think like basically I was someone who lived in what I thought was a small town because Albuquerque felt small, even though it's almost a million people. So now compared to living in a country of 50,000 people, I'm like, it wasn't that small. But I wanted, like, big, and I wanted, like, bigger experiences, and I always kind of thought, like, "Ugh, why was I born here? Like, this is the worst place ever. No one even knows that I'm a US citizen." Like, we would literally go on these school trips to, like, Washington, DC, meet people there, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you speak such good English." They didn't know that we were part of the state union. But anyway, and I think that when I was in college studying history, because I loved history, I really focused in on like modern European and American history. And I was fascinated with like Europe, World War I, World War II. And I always had like a fixation on Italy. And I was like, one day I'm going to go to Italy. And over like, I would just say these things, like, "One day I'm gonna do this," or "One day I'll do that," but it wasn't anything that I, like, obsessed over or that I had, like, a vision board about, I just wanted to, and then I started meeting people along the way who had taught overseas, they taught English, and they lived in places like China, and I was like, "Wow, what was that like?" And so I would hear their stories. I was very fascinated with the idea of, like, seeing these other cultures and just kind of being immersed in it for a while. But again, never said, like, "I'm going to do this." It was just kind of like, "That would be cool." But I never felt like I really had the balls or the cojones to do it myself.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't until later that, I met my who is now my ex-husband, who said, "Hey, by the way, I applied for this job." We were dating, we weren't engaged yet, but I applied for this job to perhaps go teach in the Middle East, and he said Dubai, and I didn't really even know where that was. And he's like, "If I got this, would you wanna go?" And so that's how the whole thing started, and when I first went that for that first school year, I thought I would probably be there for 1 school year and ended up doing I was like, "Okay, maybe 1 more year," because 10 months just didn't like, the school year is 10 months, so I didn't feel like that was enough time to really get acclimated and feel what it's really like, so, went back for another year, and that just kept snowballing, and the more that I saw more of the world, the more that I wanted to just be out.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think that that'd be almost like one of those things where once you've sort of tasted it, it's like, "Oh gosh, I really wanna experience more of that." Because I know for me, like, I grew up in a wicked small town. Like, you think Albuquerque's small, like, holy cow, if I took you to where I'm from, you'd probably think I was taking you somewhere to kill you, like, and make you disappear or something. It's like that rural. And so just going to, like, a bigger city would have been a lot for me. And so the first time I ever went, abroad or to Europe, it was it was just so fascinating, learning and being around different cultures. So I could see where that would, I think you used the word snowball, right? Like it sort of snowballs into wanting to experience that more and more. Yeah, I love that. Um, when we think about how you just sort of made these decisions and then you kind of ended up in this place in Europe now where I'm sure someday you'll probably live in Italy or at least experience that in some way since that was a chatter from your soul basically, right? So I love that it's interesting that it was like such a young age and you didn't even know why. It was just like, oh well, I like history and I think about Italy and then, and now you live in Europe, right? So it's like you're not quite in Italy, but you live in Europe. So I just love that it's like there was clearly a chatter from the beginning and your soul sort of found a way there and it's still kind of probably working its way in that direction, but it's fun to think about how young and how long ago it was that you felt that.
Yeah, and I think, like, I always say now, I wasn't a manifester, like, I didn't know what that meant, and now I'm like, "No, I actually was, I just wasn't as specific as I could have been," where it's like, because I would say things like, "One day I'm gonna live in Europe," and now I am, but it's not the Europe that I envisioned.
Gotta get more Pacific with the asks.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
funny. Um, well, I know if we want to just kind of jump right into it, because I'm not necessarily a keep it on the surface kind of gal, and neither are you. But you did mention the ex-husband, so you did share that already, and I would think of all the things in life we where we can honor ourselves. So if we put it in the perspective of what we talk about here on the podcast, I would think that of all the things in life, and when I talk to people, relationships is one of the toughest parts in life to honor ourselves. Not only because we have to kind of to some degree consider somebody else in our life now, right? So it's like, okay, I want to do this, but then there's this other person in my life that if I do this, they'll be impacted. So I think there's that. And I also think you live with somebody typically. And so you talk about like a person who can trigger you, make you see things about yourself that you don't maybe love, or they'll say or do something. And that's like what makes you go, oh, I've got an insecurity over here, and that's why they triggered me because they weren't trying to be mean to me, but it really activated me when they said or did that. So, relationships is specifically the ones that we get into with intimacy or romance, or we marry them or date them or whatever. I think those are like, like those are the places that get the most inflammatory when it comes to really putting a mirror up to ourselves. And so then that becomes a place where if it's going sideways and we have to honor ourselves in such a way that says, this is no longer working for me, I think it's hard, right? Because you spend a lot of time with that person. In your case, it sounds like that was a big part of why you left the country. There's a lot of like, interwovenness there. And so I guess my question with that ramble is how did you get to a place? And I know like probably safety might play a part, but even safety, some people don't consider for themselves when it comes to relationships, right? Some people are unsafe in relationships, in physical or mental or emotional or whatnot. So how did you kind of get to that place of saying, you know what, we're not doing this anymore? I'm out. And you honored yourself and walked out of this relationship, albeit I know because I know you, but you can tell the story if you feel like it, that was even more scary because you were, you know, in this moment of not being like hunkered down into the backyard of where you grew up, right? So, yeah. So, how did you kind of get to that place and what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were married for 7 years total, and probably, like, my first red flag of, "Ooh, I don't know if I made the right decision," was on our honeymoon, and, I think from there, it just I felt like I had already gone into this enough where I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna marry this guy, we're gonna move overseas." I already said all of these things, I already sold all of my furniture, I already got rid of my apartment, like, how can I back out of this now? And so I was like, "I'm just gonna see what happens." That's my motto in life, I've realized, is like, I don't know, let's just see what happens, and usually it takes me down some really interesting paths, and so what I saw that ended up happening is 2 people that I think were actually very incompatible trying to make something work, and um, I got to the point where I even realized I see this back and I'm like, "Gosh, I can't believe I even said that to myself." But I was like, "I don't think marriage is really meant to be happy." Like, I don't think you're supposed to be happy in a marriage. I think it is more sacrifice. I think it is that, like, the loving unconditionally is suffrage, and I really kind of settled on that for a while. And, we went to marriage counseling more than once. The counseling the first time that we had, I think, gave me enough hope to stick with it for at least a while longer. But by the year or 2 before the end of our marriage, I was, like, pretty sure that this was going to have an end. I just didn't know what that end was gonna look like. And so, um, by the time that the end was coming, I already knew, like, I was making plans for my next chapter. I started hiding money away. I started making money on the side that he didn't necessarily know about and just, like, kinda keeping this little safe deposit for myself. And I even got a job in another country, and he was supposed to stay in the country where we were living together. And the story was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go take this job in another country and maybe we'll see if things work. And then if they don't work, they don't work. And that was kind of the plan of like, it might be this slow separation. But it ended up being like a very tumultuous overnight experience. And in that, like, I'll spare all the details, but like in that experience, what I found was like, I feel like God just came down and was like, I'm going to walk you through this step by step. So the first thing that happened was the separation, the job, the hiding the money. Then the next thing was I had a dream that a man's voice in my dream kept telling me, like, you need to check his phone. And I woke up and I remember thinking, like, oh, this weird voice kept telling me to check his phone. Maybe I should do that today. And it just like was turned off. I didn't even think about it again. And then later on, I saw an opportunity, which was rare at that time, where I could check his phone. And that's when I discovered what I needed to know, like, this is done. And after that, I feel like so many people came out of the woodwork. Like, I had a lot of friends, who were friends that I would hang out with, and they kinda knew that, like, we were in a hard marriage together, but they didn't know the details, but they were so willing to help, they were so willing to support, and it just, like,
Oh.
carried me into this next chapter. And the divorce was very simple. We didn't share anything. And so it was literally filed and done, I think, within 10 days. And I just felt like, okay, that's done. Like, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it's done. And now comes this whole like, what the hell just happened? And so I moved to China, which was my plan to start teaching by myself. First time I had lived overseas alone, or like without him. And it was really hard. It was like having this mirror in front of my face of like, what did you just do for the last 7 years? Like,
Oh.
you walked away from this marriage with nothing. you have nothing to really show for that marriage. And the worst part is, like, you don't really even know who you are anymore because you had poured so much of yourself into maintaining this very toxic relationship, but, like, trying to maintain my safety within it. And so it really I feel like I knew once I got the space and the clarity, like, how much I had really betrayed myself and how much I had silenced myself that whole time. And so that was, like, the big healing, mourning, grieving thing that I had to start going through, at that point. But I was really thankful that I had, um this space and the people around me at that time too, to just kind of like I could go home after school and just be with myself and think about these things and reflect. And it just in all of that, yes, it was lonely and yes, it was hard, but it was like really eye-opening in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know it's not easy to walk through the experience that you had. Um, I was curious if we can dive a little bit deeper into this moment that you decided to start making plans, right? So, okay, I started making plans. Do you feel like there's an essence of or a timestamp or like a point where you're just like heard yourself loud and clear that hey, this isn't for us. Like we're not doing this anymore. And you decided to sort of honor that despite it being really scary, despite being like, I got to start saving my own money. Like there was a clear understanding on your side of it that it was going to take some effort for you to actually mobilize out of that. So, do you kind of remember that time? And it's okay if you don't, but it's like, is there a distinction of like, yeah, okay, I hear you. I hear you, Jessica, soul, Jessica. I get it. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I wish I could say yes, that it was that, like, it was myself saying that this is enough, but, honestly, I think what it was that at that point, I knew that enough other people had witnessed the what I was living in and the shame that that brought to me. Like, I was so embarrassed, and I could see the look of shock in other people's eyes where they were like, "You're choosing to live like this? Like, you're allowing someone to treat you like that?" And that made me feel so embarrassed and so ashamed, and I think that was when I was like, "You know what? I don't like feeling like that. I don't like feeling like I should be ashamed of this relationship and walking on eggshells all the time." And I think that ultimately kind of started helping me speak like, no, you actually deserve better than this. But it wasn't until I think there were witnesses that kind of like I could see it in their eyes.
Hmm. That's so fascinating because, most of the time we would say, being ashamed isn't necessarily the most productive feeling in the world. But I still, honestly, like from my perspective, I can still hear, uh, um, an essence of honoring yourself because you at least paid attention to the shame, right? Because a lot of people would feel the shame and be like, "Ugh, let me go bury that in the backyard, right? Because that doesn't feel comfortable or good to me. So let me take other people's eyes and like internalize the shame and then try to avoid it or not hang out with those people anymore or even like suffocate that shame with something else that I can put in my life to avoid the work it's going to take to undo that shame or get away from that shame or get away from the experience that you were having, right?
Yeah, and I think too there's like a difference in honoring yourself and taking on that shame is like, and using it to defend what is happening to other people. I think in my past, before I had kind of this recovery process from, I always say I have recovery from codependency, but I think that in the codependency, that's usually the go-to behavior is like you're defending and excusing the other person. And I think that I wasn't doing that in this moment. And I think that that was like breaking free from that cycle in a way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was almost like you utilize that emotion, which for those of you who have listened to my podcast, you know I say your soul speaks in emotion. So even if it's shame, that's still an emotion that is allowed, and that's the whole point, right? Is that we actually allow ourselves to have these experiences and these emotions. And then the work is stepping in as the parent, be like, okay, I see the shame. What does this mean? What does this look like? How am I going to deal with this? And I think it's really, I mean, I'm sure it didn't feel cool at the time for sure, but it's kind of cool to sort of reflect back into the years. And you can even see, like, even though shame was kind of a crappy feeling, it it was still like this jolt of information that your soul kind of shared with you that then you said, okay, I'm gonna step in and start doing something about this. So I that's and I'm reasoning, I'm kind of like honing in on this, I think, because I do think that any relationship ending or seeing a relationship that you've spent a lot of time on when it starts coming to an end, I think there's a lot of people that feel ashamed, or, like there's an major identity shift, right? It's like whether that's you're quitting your job, you're getting out of a long-term marriage or even a short-term marriage, you're losing a friend, or you see a friend that starts doing stuff that you're like, I'm not into that anymore. And, you start mobilizing. That does bring up a lot of emotions no matter what. So, yeah. Okay. Something that you also said, that I kind of want to unpack a little bit is you mentioned that once you moved and got away, I think you moved to China, right? So when we think about that, you said, what did I just do for the last 7 years? And I would bet anybody listening to this that has experienced, again, a major ending of something, whether that was a marriage or a friendship or a career or whatever, like, it can feel like a waste of time, if you will. How did you kinda work through that experience? Do you still feel that way? Did you work with yourself on understanding that a little bit better and not seeing it as quite a waste of time? Or how did that kinda land or end?
Yeah, I mean, that was a story that I definitely had to rewrite. And I mean, I'm in a place now where anything that I've experienced, even if it's something that I'm like, ugh, like I cringe a little bit, it's always something that I can say, but I learned a lesson. Like that was meant to happen the way that it happened. So I can look back on that now and definitely say that. I think coming off the cusp of it and being very raw in that place, I had to really untangle a lot of that just bit by bit. I think with the loss like that or any like the death of someone or whatever you said identity, and I think that was the big thing. It was like starting this whole process of like, who am I really? Because these last 7 years I've been survival mode, Jessica, and that's a totally inauthentic, just
Mm,
like doing what you need to do to survive the day kind of person. And it didn't really allow so many parts of my real self to shine through. And I remember when I was leaving to go to China, my ex sister in law actually gave me this like wind chime that was in the shape of a sun. And she was like, I got this for you because I want to make sure that you don't lose your sunshine in this process. Like you don't lose your inner sparkle. And that always stuck with me because I was like, I feel like I lost that inner sparkle over these last 7 years, and now it's, like, time to kinda excavate all of that gunk off and let that, like, shine through. Like, it really felt like I was polishing off this, like, very buried underneath all the soil kind of gem. And so the like I mentioned before, I would come home from work and I just had this, like, space to just be by myself. And in that time, it was just like an automatic thing that I did. I wasn't, like, consciously thinking these things and planning it out. I was just doing it. But I was prioritizing the gym because I knew that going and working out helped me feel good. Like, I didn't do it for fitness or for weight loss. I literally did it just for that, like, hit of dopamine and endorphins and whatever it gives you. And then I would come home and cook, like, a healthy little dinner for myself, and then I would, like, listen to music and dance around, or I would something that would make me laugh. And now when I see that back, I'm like, "Oh, that was so, like, nurturing and, like, just taking care of yourself in a different way that I hadn't really done in a long time." And it was very simple and it was very, like I said, nothing that was really planned. And I think that all of that just really I started to realize again that I was funny. I think I lost that for a long time where I was like, "Oh my gosh, I actually am I have some humor. I have a little bit wit." And so that started to come back. I started to make friends with the women that I worked with, and we just would have this, like, hoot and holler time, and I was like, "This is a whole version of me that I feel like I had forgotten for so long." So it was a very healing process.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so I wrote down just when you were saying that, for people listening, because I think there's a lot of people who get to a point where it's like, okay, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've gotten so lost into motherhood or this relationship or my job, or, those are probably the top three things people lose themselves in. Or maybe it is like a religion or, something that kind of like sucks you in and then you get out of it and you're like, God, I don't even know who the hell I am anymore. I don't even know what I like. I don't even know who I used to be. I described it to my business coach that it was so clear to me that there was a Melissa on the other side of the bridge, and there was this long, rickety bridge across a very deep hole in the earth. And I could see her, but it was foggy, and it was like I was gonna have to go across that bridge to reunite with her again. So that was my, like, analogy of when I left corporate and I had to kind of re-experience myself, if you will. And so I think that a lot of times we do kinda know because we always have our soul, so there's, like, but it's like that going to that process of getting to know her again and building a relationship with her again. So my question that came up when you were talking about that, and when you got through this process to start becoming you again, or even becoming something maybe you'd never been before at all because you just didn't, was it scary?
I think it was very exciting. I was so excited. I felt like for the first time in a long time, I was waking up and not, like, dreading the day. And I was waking up and feeling like I suddenly felt like the whole rest of my life was so unplanned, and I was like, "Oh, I get to, like, create this thing now?" So that part I think was scary. If I look at it on a day-to-day basis, I was more excited. Then when I would look far ahead, that part felt scary. And the reason that felt really scary, and I remember talking to my therapist at the time about this, you mentioned, like, losing yourself, even if it's part of like a religion thing too. So that was part of this story as well, is that religion was really interwoven in this marriage and into the friendship groups and into this whole thing. And so when the marriage ended, a lot of that also ended. So I lost a lot of friendships, I lost a lot of community, and I lost a lot of the things that I thought were the things that kept me very stable. And so as I was going through this process, I was also having to simultaneously kind of re-examine, like, what is my faith and what does that whole thing mean? And the loss of that anchoring, because I'm coming from a family that doesn't necessarily have this like tight anchoring unit, but my ex and his family were very tight and very, it's us against the world kind of thing. And that always gave me a sense of belonging. And so once I knew I was kicked out of that as well, so I got like booted from this like religion, I got booted from the family, I got booted from the country that I was living in. And I just was like, so that was scary. And I talked to my therapist about the anchor. Like I kept saying, I feel like I'm so unanchored right now.
It's like a
And
free
he
fall.
was, yeah. And he was like, "But the beauty is now you get to choose where you want to put your anchor next." And I was like, "Oh," and that just really sat with me because I was like, "I get to choose this now." So it was like a half empowering thing and then half terrifying because it's like, now I have to navigate this thing. And I remember I would vacation by myself on school holidays a lot, and I would use that time. I don't know why I was, like, obsessed. Well, I do know why, because I was, like, getting into my late 30s by that point, and I was like, "Do I wanna have kids or do I not?" And I would, like, obsessively think, "Do I want that or do I not?" Because that kind of decides what matters, you know? And, so it's like it's interesting because when you feel like you don't have a lot of choice for yourself and you're kind of giving your power away to someone else for a very long time, and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I have all the power to make my own decisions. It's like it's that I was lacking the trust in myself for a long time to really know, is this really the right decision? And allow myself to make a decision, first of all, and then be okay with whatever the outcome of that choice was. So
Mm.
that was the scary part for sure.
Yeah, especially because if the choices that you had made leading up to that felt like a moment in time that was like, I didn't really predict this outcome. This wasn't the outcome I hoped for, per se. Assuming not any of us get married to get divorced, right? Like, we're not planning on that. Or like, hey, I can't wait to get divorced one day. But it happens. And so, trusting yourself to take the next step in either whether it was a relationship or a job, or, that building the trust with yourself again, I'm sure was just just kind of a process, really. I mean, that takes a lot of rebuilding the relationship with yourself and trusting yourself again to take care of yourself effectively, or take care of your soul.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think, like, I will say, like, other than finding out that I was funny again, one of the other things that I realized is that I think like, in that time where I was very second guessy of, like, my choices and rebuilding the trust in myself and my higher power, I also was like, maybe there's a maybe I do have good discernment. And I knew that because a colleague told me one time, like, it seems like you're very selective with who you spend your time with. The way he said it was not meant to be a compliment. But when he said that, I was like, yeah, I am. Like, I'm not going to spend time with people that don't make me feel safe, don't make me feel good, like feel like an off energy. And that's when I was like, yeah, I feel like I kind of am navigating this ship. And it felt like I was advocating for myself
Yeah.
and not just falling into this, like, just take whatever you can get, hang
Yeah.
out with whoever says they want to hang out with you. So that was very empowering.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Awesome. So switching gears a little bit, I would love to the last hear a little bit about the last couple years, because I know that you also got out of teaching, which is another big kind of ticket item for exiting stage left to something that wasn't really working for you and then moving into what you do today. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about that moment where you said, I'm not going to teach anymore, and how you honored yourself in that moment. And then what's the process been to date of how you landed on this personal narrative coach, right? Personal
Yeah.
narrative coach. So, how did you get to a place where you're like, I'm getting out of teaching and now I'm going to do narrative coaching, personal narrative coaching?
That was a very long journey, and you have been part of that
Mm.
front seat. Yeah, I got out of teaching mostly because the pandemic happened and it was like the perfect window of opportunity. I knew that after my 3rd year of teaching that that was not going to be the thing I wanted to do long term, but I was on this like path of trying to figure out what else I could do, what else I wanted to do. And you could name anything and I played around with it and nothing really landed. And so, when the pandemic happened, I actually was living here in Liechtenstein, but teaching my students in China. It's a very long story, but I had a lot of time by myself again because I had to wake up and teach them in the middle of the night and everyone else is sleeping. And so I could journal, and I remember I was journaling, like, what do you really like doing? Like, what are things that you really love doing? And I had a bunch of ideas. A couple of them didn't really work out. And then the one that I landed on was writing. And I found out that there was this whole world called copywriting, and I had never even heard of that before. So as I went into my last year of teaching, I was like, I'm going to learn copywriting, and that's going to be my ticket out. And then as soon as I start my copywriting business, I'll figure out, because that's what I do, I'll figure out what comes next. And I started my copywriting business. I feel like it was just a fumble after a fumble after a fumble. I had no idea what I was really doing. Somehow I got clients and it worked, and I figured it out as I went. But I kind of found myself back in this place of like, I don't really love it, you know? And I thought leaving teaching because I didn't really love that either. I really wanted to find something that like I woke up every morning and just felt so excited to do the work. Not so excited because it's almost Friday, not so excited because it's almost the holiday. And so, I started exploring stories within the copywriting. So I was helping people with their like, what is your origin story? What's your brand story? And once I started hearing people's stories, I was like, I really have this like obsession with it. And then I just said, okay, I'm going to just focus on the brand story part. And I did that for a while, but then that led to the next thing, which was people have a lot of stories that they're really uncomfortable sharing. They really haven't processed what has really happened. They're carrying a lot of shame with some of their experiences, and a lot of those experiences are really they matter to what they do now, but they don't see it that way. And so I was like, what if I could help people like reframe that? What if I could help them kind of do what I had to do and like see your transformative experiences as something that is very empowering and not this thing that like, "Ugh, that happened, but I'm gonna tuck it away and, like, pretend it didn't and never talk about it." And so that's how the personal narrative stuff came about. Um, and it just felt very natural because it's like I said, it's what I've been doing. And a lot of my own recovery, I mentioned recovery earlier, and I started Al Anon like many years ago, 15 plus years ago. And a lot of those practices and the boundary setting and open vulnerability, it all plays into what I believe helps people really unpack these stories. So that's ultimately how I got here.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what your experience was like moving from this person who was helping people with their brand stories and then into this helping people rewrite their stories so that it empowers them and they don't stay stuck in the struggle of that story too, because what you've identified is that not only do those stories sometimes get tucked in, but subconsciously they're probably playing a little bit in the background, maybe a lot of bit in the background, and then we take those stories and we live our life through that lens, and that keeps us kind of stuck and small, playing like in this land of I don't love my life. So I'm kind of curious just because I think it would help people understand a little bit more about what it was like for you to go from this, okay, I'm going to do copywriting. Okay, now I'm going to do brand story. Okay, now I'm going to really lean in and help transform people's lives because the other, it's just like me when I was doing sales consulting versus what I'm doing now, right? Like it was more comfortable. It was like, I can do this. And then when I started getting into what I'm doing now, which is helping people honor themselves and really like change their lives, I like personally had a lot of oh shit moments. So I'm just curious if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of what that experience was like for you going from A to B to C. Yeah. What was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, it was terrifying. Like, I mean, anyone that has started a business, you have like this idea of the skill or the service or the product that you're going to offer someone, and your sight is kind of set on that thing, right? So I was like obsessed over writing and learning copywriting, but I didn't realize like, oh, there's marketing and there's sales and there's like back end organization and there's like all these things that go into it. So it felt like I was back in university, but like I didn't want to be. Like I was very frustrated a lot with this whole learning process. Um, and I feel like once I got that, probably that first year under my belt, the confidence of, oh, okay, so everything, Maria Forleo always says like everything's figure outable. That just really, I mean, I proved it to myself. So I was like, it really is figure outable. It's not easy. And this was before Chat GPT too. So it was like you had to
Out here
read.
raw dogging without Chat GPT.
You had to read. And so now
Indeed.
you had to read and scroll. And it was just like that part was hard. And then I think the hardest part of all of this was not like the copywriting, what I realized, the copywriting and the brand messaging and the story, I was kind of using other people's guidance for that. I would read a book or I would read a blog or I would learn from this coach and I would learn from that marketing guru and I would put these things together and I was like, okay, I'm a teacher. I can teach. So I can teach them what these people are teaching and kind of put it together in my way. But then when it came to like the personal narrative stuff, I was like, I'm not really teaching other people's stuff anymore. I'm creating my own. And it felt very vulnerable when I first started putting that out there. Because for the first time, I was like, if people don't buy this or if they don't like it, like that really means they don't like me, not that they don't like the service, they don't like that method, they don't like the process, they don't like me, and that became a whole other thing that I had to kind of work through. So I think that anyone that's like starting something like this or thinking about starting something like this, like the tie, because I remember when I started, everybody was talking about mindset. You got to have a good mindset to be a good entrepreneur. And I was like, yeah, 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 I have a good mindset, but I did not know what that really meant. And I now believe that it's like, when you are starting this and you don't have someone else giving you your targets, you don't have somebody else giving you, like, by the end of this semester, these kids need to know this. Like, you have no scope and sequence that's just given to you. You're doing everything, you're making every decision. If you don't have that trust within yourself, and you don't have, for me, it's like if I don't feel connected to the source, to my creator that's like giving me the ability to make these decisions, I'm just going to be floundering about, and it's going to be really crazy because there's too much noise coming at you all the time, and you have to have that inner knowing with yourself to know, like, this is right for me. That strategy might work for you, but for me, that is not hitting right. And I mean, I still struggle with this, and I still have to like be very mindful of what is coming in and what feels aligned for me. But it's like the best personal growth thing or path ever. Like, this is like, you want to up level, this is like your little incubator to get right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's an entrepreneur on earth that ever talks about it just being like this easy peasy street. It really picks a lot of scabs, if you will, to a lot of wounds, and it exposes you and all your insecurities and all your self-consciouses, for sure. So I something that really stood out to me with what you said, it was like going through that process of then containerizing your own thing. It was almost like it was your thing that you birthed. Granted, you pull from narrative therapy, you pull from Al-Anon, you pull from the STEPS program. Like, you're pulling from these different places, but ultimately, what your product now is a container of all of Jessica's information that Jessica has experienced over time. And so it's like containerizing your own thing is like birthing your own thing. And then that equates to this thing is now mine. So therefore it represents me. And therefore the worthiness is sort of front and center. And I can't hide it. I can't tuck it in. I can't do anything with it other than it's like literally out in front. It's like a blinking neon light of like, this is my thing. So therefore, if people buy it, that means I'm worthy. If people don't buy it, that means I'm not worthy. Or it could mean like, if people don't buy it, it must think I'm a loser. Like, so much comes out. It makes me think about that James Wedmore podcast that we recently listened to and referenced. Cause it's like, if you just go mow somebody's lawn, or if you just work for a corporation, it's like, they tell you what to do. It's still them telling you what to do. So it's like, well, like, it's not really my ideas anyway. And mowing a lawn is not to like diminish that, because obviously that's really important work. But you can be like, I mowed your lawn, that'll be $50, please. Right. Versus like, if it's something you quite literally created, like you knitted this program. Right. And so now it's like, do you want to buy my Afghan? And it was like, if someone says no, it's like, oh my God, what does that mean about me? So I know, like, we almost had that experience borderline in parallel, right? Like, we both were birthing this thing that was like what felt like our heart and soul went into it, and all of our experiences. And both of us had this moment of like, fuck, like, are we really doing this? And we both were just like, oh shit. And at different kind of points, I can't remember who experienced it first, but at different points, we both had to say to each other, like, no, like, keep going. Like, this is what you're meant to do. And that was really hard. And you really have to honor yourself. And this is where my definition of honoring yourself, right, is 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 like recognizing, respecting, and responding to your emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental needs without the whole, like, everybody else gets a say in it thing. So I a lot of people might hear honoring yourself and think, "Oh, I just, this learning what I like to do and then going and doing that." Yes, but also honoring yourself is giving yourself a safe space to create the life that you want for yourself. And in order to do that, you have to console yourself. You have to breathe through it. You have to remind yourself that no matter what, I love and accept myself, even if somebody thinks my rewritten program's crap, or even if somebody thinks my Honor You lab is complete garbage, even if people think this podcast is the stupidest thing they've ever heard in their lives, right? So even if we're still doing what we need to do, but we have to hear ourselves be a little scared in those moments and go internal and face and give our power somewhere else instead of expecting ourselves to always have it within ourselves. So I would love to kind of hear just a tad bit more about that particular experience for you, because I know for me, I was like, it was very raw and it was very real, and I was literally like having an oh shit moment. The day August, I'll still remember the day. August 11th is when we started, and I was like, uh-oh. So people have bought this. Uh-oh. Should I just give it? I think I literally said to you, I should just get like, I think I should just give everybody their money back. Like I should just return everybody's money to them. So, what was your experience? Like, I know what mine was like. So, any thoughts
I
on
think
that?
we started on the same day because it was August 11th for me too, and it was the same like, I remember I had a live call. I had just kind of put together that first lesson and put it out there, and I
Yeah.
was, like, terrified, like, there was just something about it that I had not experienced before when I did any of my other things, whether it was a group program or a workshop or anything, and this was a first, and I kept thinking, like, if I put this out there and it's not just that you kinda curated this thing and you're putting it out there, but you're also showing them that it worked because it worked for me,
Yeah.
and now I'm teaching you that it worked, but on the inside right now, I'm like vibrating with nerves, and it's like, "Did it really work for me? I'm a freaking mess right now." And so I was doubting it also just because of how I felt, and I was like, "Shouldn't I be more together right now?" Um, but it's funny because as soon as I put it out there and once it was out and I started to actually do the work alongside everybody, I was like, "Oh, this is really good." It's like I was guiding myself back through what I needed to do to get grounded. And I mean, I never heard like nervous system regulation or anything like that before the last couple of years. And that's been a massive help for me because I knew what anxiety was and I knew what anxiety felt like. I just didn't really know how to like calm myself down. And so that helped a lot and it continues to, and like finding the things that do work for you and knowing when to, okay, this tool is the one that I think is going to help me right now the most and I'm going to actually use it. Yeah, and I think that's what that first week felt like.
Yeah. Yeah, you said something in there, "Shouldn't I be more together?" And like to me that's like a sentence that can be applied to generalized life, right? Because anytime that we go to do something new, or anytime in my mind like you true to gosh are taking one foot in front of the other and doing your purpose, which I always define as fulfilling your soul's desires, like anytime you take that step, it's often going to create these like feelings of feeling very messy, or what if I get exposed, or what if people find me out, like that imposter syndrome. Should I even be really doing this? Do I deserve this? Am I worthy to? Yeah, it just really uncovers a lot of things when you start taking one foot in front of the other and putting one foot in front of the other to say, oh, actually, this is what my soul really wants to offer to the world. So I'm going to move forward with it. And so I think for anybody listening, if you start mobilizing yourself, and that doesn't matter if it's career, running your own business, living in a corporate world, in marriages, in friendships, anytime you sort of like decouple yourself from whatever that thing is and you start mobilizing and moving in the direction for yourself because you want to honor your soul's desires, it's going to feel it's going to feel messy. I mean, I think that's one of the top 10 reasons, or maybe even top 5, maybe even top 3 reasons why people don't make a change, because it is so uncomfortable and it's going to be messy. And holding ourselves through that, I think is, for me, I know has been like the ultimate, that's just what I've had to do.
100%. And that's like, you've helped me a lot too through all of that, because it's like, you can get to a place where you just, like I always say, blind spots. Like you have these blind spots that, as much work as we've done on ourselves and on our growth, there's still areas that you're like, oh, I didn't realize that that was even happening. And as I was going through this, there were a lot of things that were coming up that you helped me catch the blind spot, like help me notice it, and then helped me like, okay, well, now what are you going to do with that? And it really is just that, like I always say, you have to have so much self-compassion through all of this, because if you're beating yourself up this whole time, uh, if you're not your own best cheerleader, like who else is going to be? And that's that's the biggest work, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, what, like, went through my, like, a vision that went through my head while you were saying that is, it's like there's this experience where there's something that wants to kinda, like, come out and do and move around, and then there's, like, the mind's, like, tackling it left and right, and, like, and you're just trying to, like, break free of the tackle, and you just keep on. It's like, we watched football last night, maybe that's why I'm thinking about that, but it's like,
It's good though.
it's like
Good
wrestling
one.
a slippery pig or something. It's just, it can feel very like, oh, like, okay, I'm doing this again. But when you're doing work that matters, whether that's like, again, becoming a parent or being in a relationship, when you're building on that and you're doing work that matters, it really does have that essence to it that it can be very scary and very, very fear invoking, especially with the mind, because the mind will play this game of, oh, but don't do that. Like, because if it's something different, then I can't predict the future. If I can't predict the future, then we're going to die. So we must not do that. And that'll literally be the game it plays. And again, that can be anything. It can be like starting a new workout routine, getting out of a relationship, starting a new career, pivoting completely out of something you've always done. So, and the other thing that I wrote down is, you said for you when you were actually going through your own program, you're like, oh, this is actually really good. And so I think that that's also a big ticket item here to take away, is like, when you start stepping forward, your mind is going to warn you, and that's okay. Like, we need warning signs. It keeps us from not running out into oncoming traffic, right? Or touching something that's really hot. So it's doing the right thing, and you have to let it do that and kind of consider, okay, yeah, I get that. Okay, sure. But once you start doing, then you show the mind, like, hey, see, like, it's okay. Like, we can do more of this. It's a safe environment we're building here. And so I think what I would say as a takeaway is, like, if there's anybody out there that's like thinking about making a major change, whether that's getting out of a relationship or changing careers or ending friendships that aren't really aligned anymore or whatever it is, there is going to be the fear. And then, like, you literally take like 4 steps, and you're like, oh, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. I'm gonna be okay. It's, so then it's like building that resiliency and building that trust with yourself again, that you've got yourself, and no matter what, even if, like, yeah, it does go sideways. Even if people think our stuff sucks, well, it's fine. Like, we'll just let it go around the horn, let it go through its process, take stock, do it again a better way, you know? But that's the point, really more is that we're honoring ourselves, and that is the point. The outcomes aren't the point. Feeling comfortable isn't the point. People disliking something isn't the point. The point is that we're doing it because that's what we heard we were supposed to do, and then we learn from there. So, any parting thoughts, Jessica? I usually like to ask my guests what their definition of honoring yourself is. So I'm trying to build up a repertoire of definitions of what honoring yourself is.
That I would say honoring yourself is really hearing your voice over anybody else's voice and knowing what it is that you really want to do without the outside roles and expectations playing any part in that decision.
Yeah, that's beautiful because man, do we ever make decisions for ourselves based on the outside world. I'm like, wait, why am I'm not happy?
Yeah.
Because you're making decisions for everybody else except for yourself. Oh man. Okay. Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation and I really appreciate your time and especially appreciate your patience with me fiddling around with my microphone.
Of course.
The
Thank
world of podcasting and tech, folks. It's probably not for me. So guys, next time till next time, keep honoring yourself. And Jessica, thank you for being a part of the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. We'll talk soon, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.